All right, welcome everybody. My name is Tom Dutta. I'm the host of the Quiet Warrior Show, and I'm live streaming today on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube with a guest that I'm going to introduce you to in a moment. You can see her there on the screen, and she looks great. I want to set this up a little bit that the live streaming world is all about interrupting the airwaves. This show is live streaming, and we're taping an episode of an international podcast called the Quiet Warrior Show. You can subscribe to that show on your favorite podcast channel so that you can get the release when it comes out. And today we're going to be having some fun. Hopefully you can stay on. This will be left as a replay if you are catching us in midstream. All right, so we're going to cue this up. Stand by in 3, 2, 1. Well, welcome to the Quiet Warrior Show. My name is Tom Dutta. I am the Quiet Warrior, and I'm excited to have on my show today my special guest, Genevieve Piturro. Genevieve, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Tom.
All right. Well, listen, and first of all, the magic of technology, we are live streaming. You're over there in, I believe, New York, Irvington. Is that correct?
Yes, I'm in New York. Yeah.
Awesome. And I'm in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. We truly have an international audience today. And I want to just start this off by saying how I came across you. And then I'm going to get into turning it over to you because it's all about you. And that somebody reached out to me who knew your work and said, would you like to have Genevieve as a guest? And that individual knew my show from online. And when I first took a look at what you were doing, I honestly, my heart just grew, and I was blown away. I said, I got to have you on my show. And so we're teasing the audience now, but let me set this up by turning it to you and welcome. Tell us something about yourself that you think most people don't know.
That the jump off the corporate ladder was as scary as jumping into the ocean off a bridge.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you, you got me excited about that. We'll let you pause while I can build you up. I've got your bio here. And as you'll know, when I hear things you say, my brain is three-dimensional. I go on these journeys. My father was born in the Fiji Islands, and I only found out later in life that he learned to swim by being pushed off a bridge. So, I mean, there's certainly some scariness in that memory of my dad's. Can't wait to hear your story. Everybody, Genevieve founded the hugely successful national nonprofit Pajama Program. You'll notice if you're watching this, there's a stock ticker on the screen with the website. And it was a 6-year-old girl's question almost 20 years ago that changed Genevieve's life forever. We're going to hear more about that. Today, this program has delivered 7 million good nights filled with magical gifts of pajamas and books to children throughout the United States. Genevieve is also a professional speaker, a consultant, and she shares life and leadership lessons she's learned through this Pajama Program journey, which is one of my interests. She's appeared on many media, including the Oprah Winfrey Show, the Today Show, Good Morning America, the Early Show, CNN, Fox, Wall Street Journal. I mean, it goes on and on. It's incredible. But she's been a recipient of awards, too, for her selfless work. I've highlighted a few, including the Shining World Compassion Award, the Smart CEO Award of New York, Andrus's Heart for Children's Award, and there's many more on her bio. And I also want to give a shout out to a man in her life, Dimo DiMartile. That's her husband. You'll hear about him, I'm sure, through the story. So now that I've built you up and maybe embarrassed you a little bit, Genevieve, let's get into the story. I mean, my show is built on the hero's journey narrative, which is when sometimes we hear a call to go on an adventure, we take it and we come back and we do something meaningful in the world. Tell me about where this all started. You began a career back in the corporate world. You were born in Italy or born somewhere between there and here. Just go back as far as you can to help us understand that.
Sure. I was born here, but my dad was born in Italy. And he came to America with his father. And it was a trying time because it was supposed to be his mother, his father, and him. And as they were boarding the boat in Italy, his mother showed signs of sniffles and sneezing. And they took her aside and determined that she was too sick to take the voyage. And right then and there, she stayed and they left. And they came to America. And my grandfather wanted my father, who was 15, to have the American dream. And, my grandfather wanted it too. So they came, and my father married a woman, my mom, also Italian, actually. Her family's from Sicily. So it was a very traditional upbringing. I was the firstborn. And they I know they expected grandchildren. They expected, marriage and grandchildren, and that wasn't my path, turned out.
Yes. Well, first of all, we honor you for sharing that part of the story. You and I talked before we got on here that part of my connection to learning about you is that my wife is from Italy, born just outside of Rome. And it's funny because her story is they were on a boat coming over as well, and her father almost lost her. He thought she'd fallen overboard. And there
Oh,
many immigrants who come to North America, you're in the US. I mean, her father chose Canada. It doesn't matter. It's a huge step to move from your home to another country, especially at the age of 15. Now, I want to talk about your book as we do this interview. And there's a picture on the wall behind you. I know the audience listening won't see it, but I read in there a little bit about that, about your upbringing. And there was something in you that was searching for, I'm not sure if the word's freedom, but you had this passion or something that drove you to go out into the world. Just talk about that. I mean, where did that all start?
yes, I had this independent streak. And in the book, maybe you've gotten to the part where my mom tells a story, and to this day, 85 years old, she's living in a senior residence, and she gets the biggest kick out of reminding me that when I was 2, I made my way out of the crib with the high bars and everything just to be free. And I do remember, I don't remember the 2-year-old incident, but I remember always wanting to be free. And growing up, I watched Mary Tyler Moore, and I say I wanted to be like Mary. I wanted to go to a big city, and I wanted a great job and climb that corporate ladder and have everything, including her great wardrobe. And I that's what my path was. That's what I thought it was.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, a lot of the work I do, you know, a bit about my background, I've studied a lot of brain science and learned that in the first 10, 15 years, we don't have the use of our rational brain, the prefrontal cortex. So we really can't rationalize our thoughts. And they say that passion comes from the first 10 years of life. And so there you are climbing out of your crib at the age of 2, and this creativity gene within you. What fascinates me is you also grew up in I think, a traditional Italian family, if I'm saying that correct. And I know some of the rules in that culture, from my involvement with my wife's family. There's sometimes freedoms and limitations, particularly for girls. Was there any of that in your upbringing? Any rebellion to be free for any particular reason?
24/7. It was very hard. I was the firstborn. I was the first girl, two girls and boys, and it was always repeated that I had to set the example for my brother, my sister, and my brother. And I was thought, why? We're so different. I don't.
Yeah.
Why do I have to stay in this um, path? Because I have to be responsible for them following. They shouldn't have to follow. They should do their own thing, and I should be able to do my own thing. But as the firstborn girl, there was a lot of pressure, and it's so funny because as I was decided I was going to climb the corporate ladder, and I didn't get married, but they wanted me to go to college. They wanted us to have an education, but then get married and have kids. At my sister's wedding, it's me, my brother, then my sister. My father took me aside, and he was so serious, and I thought something was wrong. He asked me if I was okay that my sister was getting married before me.
Wow.
And I was stunned. I said, "Yeah, Dad, I'm fine. I'm okay." And I was touched and I was surprised, but that's where he was coming from.
Yeah. You had loving parents. I mean, I read some of that in your book.
Hmm.
You had parents that were very nurturing and supportive. My life story is the opposite. My home sort of fell apart, I guess. My dad was a drinker, and parents divorced. When I met my wife Anna 25 years ago, she brought into my life what I hear from you, which is why I'm drawn to you in your story. There was this nucleus of a supportive family. Now, in her home, and I only learned this recently from her, trying to figure out, why do we always butt heads sometimes in our marriage? And she grew up in traditional roles. She couldn't, date boys. She had to clean and serve. And I remember she told me, she said, when she came to this country, Canada, she said to her mom, I think it was age 12, she said, "Mom, if you want me to be like that, then we should go back to Italy." And Anna went into the corporate world grew up as a manager in the bank, a man's world. And so a similar thread, I mean, this desire to, be free and to go out in the world and put a stamp on the world, I think is just amazing. I'm so proud of that part of your story. It's so authentic. And I see as somebody who inspires other women. I want to do something here, which I'm going to get your permission to read some things from your book. Is that all right?
Sure.
All right. Now, I got to say to everybody, one of the things I do, people say, do you actually read the books of your guests? Yeah, I do. This is a job for me and a passion. And I read every book if a guest has one. A little tip for everybody, it's a teaching moment on the show. If you read it online, like a Kindle reader or something like that, you actually can highlight things. And then if you go in the features, you can print out your notes. And so that's what I've done. I've got a lot of notes here. So I want you to sit back and just listen to this. It comes from the book Purpose, Passion, and Pajamas, How to Transform Your Life, Embrace the Human Connection, and Lead with Meaning by Pitturo Genevieve Piturro. Chapter 2, Your Heart Voice is Calling. This will be a few minutes, so bear with me. When the last child received his pajamas, I walked over to the little girl and tried again. I knelt down, held out the same pink set I'd thrown over my shoulder, and brushed the sleeve of the pajamas across her hand. Feel how soft they are? They'll be so comfy to sleep in. I think you'll love them. She looked at me and, in a hushed voice, asked, "What are they?" What are Her voice trailed off as she struggled to say the word. "They're pajamas," I said, confused. "Where do I wear them? To bed at night?" She shook her head, puzzled. "What do you usually wear to sleep?" I asked. "My pants," she said softly. I struggled to stop the tears so she wouldn't think she said or did something wrong. She gently took the pajamas from me. I wanted to pull her close and give her a big hug and run out the door with her, but I resisted, remembering one of the restrictions placed on the volunteers was no physical contact with these children. I gave her a big smile as the kind staffer walked the girl to the bedroom, and then I had a good cry for myself. I felt like a fool and solemnly left the building. Pajamas, just a simple thing. But I wanted the children to have something new, something clean and warm to sleep in a world where they had so little. I wanted them to have something of their very own, not hand-me-downs, used, torn, or dirty, brand new, just for him or her, so the child would feel special. These children were already cheated out of so much that I didn't want to be cheated out of pajamas too. I never asked questions about the children when I went to read. I watched and I listened. I didn't pry. That's partly because the staff wasn't giving me personal details. I read the newspapers and watched the TV reports, and I knew what horrible things adults did to kids, even their own kids. Up until then, when I'd seen things in the media, it had somehow seemed part of a different world. But this was personal to me now. I know that I read in the book there that that was such a very emotional scene for you, and I put it out there to get you back into that story. We'll go back and talk about your corporate career for a minute, but that was a moment I called the hero's journey, where we go on, we something happens and we have this call to go on an adventure, and we answer that call. Tell me about that moment.
It's what you said. It so many emotions, and climbing the corporate ladder. I didn't feel. We didn't feel in a corporate job. I didn't feel. We didn't talk about feelings. We were working. It wasn't something for the greater good. It was for our immediate team. The reason we were there, the bottom line, all of that, and all of a sudden, I was face to face with a little human being who was feeling afraid and lonely and worried. And I don't know what had happened the day before. And she was looking at me, and I felt like I said, I wanted to hug her. And I wanted so badly to tell her, it's going to be okay. Tell me what's the matter, and hug her and hold her. And it was just this pull. And it was also confusing to me because half of me was saying, where have you been? Talking to myself, you know, reading the paper and being in front of a little child like that, looking at you with hope and with almost these eyes that touch your heart, and you're locked in the eyes with her, and it all happens in seconds. there's so much. It was overwhelming, and I was kneeling down, and I say thank goodness, because I don't know if I was trying to be normal for her. I didn't want her to see that she had rocked me. I didn't want to cry. I didn't want her to think she did something wrong. So all of this was trying to find some place in me to have a conversation with her on my knees, face to face, and in the moment just be a place of peace for her, and then I could figure it out later. So there was so much more than I just said, all in racing in my mind.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I mean, my heart's growing like in that Christmas movie, The Grinch Who Stole Christmas, the three times, and the emotions, I can feel it. And I read something else. I just want to make another reference to your book on, well, at least page 40 of what I was reading online. It says, our memories and emotions hold the keys to our actions. Until I met this little girl who changed everything for me, that talking peanut who cried, "Don't eat me," and my mom's candy bar story remained very deep in my childhood memory bank, a gentle reminder of those precious moments feeling. I wanted to say that I'm an advocate for mental health, as you may have discovered. And I learned that we come into the world as golden children, and this child would be one. We have no thoughts and emotions, and yet we have millions of neurons in our brains waiting to be filled with emotions and thoughts that are wired together. That's our brain's job. And when children grow up and they have bad situations like that, those are the things that are wired in their thinking patterns and unfortunately rule them in life. And one of the things I took out of your amazing work is, I'll go back to my childhood for a minute just to honor you, that when things were going on in my home, it was a very traumatic home. And I think I was around 12, 13. I used to go to bed at night. I didn't have my dad to read me a story. I didn't have my mom reading me a story. I was making up stories and escaping with them in my own mind. And when I learned about your mom tucking you in and reading you a story and how that memory and thought was wired into you, it seems like at some point in your life you woke up and said, wait a minute, these children don't have that. And I need to put that right. I need to give them that moment which represented something to you. Just talk about that.
It was the moment when I followed, after I was giving children just books and reading to them, when I followed to see where they were taking them to go to sleep after I finished reading. And when I looked and saw the bare room, just as bare as the one I was reading to them in, and I was on the floor reading with them on the floor, there were just some cots and a couple of kids, to one surface in some cases. They were crying and they had no pajamas. My bedtime rushed, the memories rushed to me. I'd
Yeah.
never thought about them 38 years. And I
Wow.
realized from people telling me it wasn't something everybody, reflects on all the time. And what I saw in my memory and what I felt in my memory was so clearly absent. It was just void of emotion. And the staff were lovely, but it's not having your mom or your dad or your sister or your grandmother or anybody you trust sitting at your bedside for those bonding moments and that security. And I realized all those things my mom gave me, wrapped up in pajamas and a story
Yeah.
and a hug and a kiss, means everything for a child, means everything: security, comfort, safety, trust, knowing that in the morning that person will be there. No matter what happens during the day, there's somebody that loves you. And these children had nobody that had their back except authorities, who then had to step in. And to me, that was just, for the first time, what that they had that right,
Yeah.
and that they deserved that, and it was taken away through nothing that they had done, nothing that they had done.
Absolutely. And I think about the implication of that in America, where you've done your amazing work. I think about, my roots go back to India, and the millions of children in other parts of the world who will never know what pajamas are, and maybe can't read, and will never have books. I'm inspired by you so much. I understand, as a part of the book I was reading, I smiled where you were in your pantsuit, you called it, from work, I think, and you, after exploring this whole thing, you went and bought, I think it was, you stuffed it in 12 shopping bags, got on the subway, and was lugging those things in to give them to children. I was just thinking, like, that's like Santa Claus or Mrs. Claus coming. But they say that when you take the hero's journey, you have a movement in your soul. And sometimes when you go on that journey, it's called the dark night of the soul, where you really are seeking to discover, what is this? What is my calling? And sometimes it's a tough journey. I read a little bit further about you're still questioning your 38-year career, and then a moment where it came to you, and there's some reference to a water droplet. I want to just go backwards in the story for a moment, because you are a very successful woman from business. I think you're in marketing and other areas of business, a corporate leader for 38 years. And then I say the unthinking treadmill, Genevieve, we're on this. I'm the CEO myself, who have worked for 38 years myself prior to making some shifts. And the people we meet are on this unthinking treadmill, going to work and doing these high pressure jobs, coming home. And I learned that unless I reflected and stepped away from my thoughts, I could never really find what that call to adventure was. Tell me about what happened. I mean, 38 years in a career, and then all of a sudden you're almost giving it all up for something you couldn't even see past the first step.
Well, I was 38 years old. So I had been climbing that corporate ladder for 15 or so years, and then all the years of school before, and Mary Tyler Moore watching. So,
Hey, I love that show.
I know, I still do. I still do. Wish I could have met her and took a picture with her statue.
Wow.
But
Wow.
it became, once I saw that bedroom that they had, it became an obsession. Um, I tried to tame it because I had to work.
Yeah.
But it was, and my head was fighting with my heart. And I think a lot of us are in that position. We want to do something, our heart is calling, we're listening, because that's what happened. I I heard that heart voice ask me one day, if this is the next 30 years of your life, is this enough? And that's when I started to seek out bringing children into my life, because I didn't have children. And
Right.
that voice somehow made its way to my ears, and I heard it, and I wondered later how many times I've been given those voices or those hints, and how many times do all of us push
Yeah.
down this voice? Say, point to yourself. If you point to yourself, you point here, right? You don't point here. This isn't us.
That's right.
This is us. And I wonder how many times I didn't listen to that heart voice, but I listened then, because it was loud. It was probably knocking me, with the hammer on my head. And
Yeah.
that started that I was listening to that heart, and I was trying to ignore that head, but that head was, continuing to challenge everything. And that obsession came from my heart. And only until I somehow reversed it, my head realized this heart's going to win. So let me get in line and let me see if I can help her figure out. Let me use my brain and let me help her figure out how to make her heart lead. That it reversed. And once it reversed, things started to fall in place. But it was a struggle. It was a challenge to take that leap, to jump. As I said in the very beginning, it's hard, but and there are other ways to do it, but that's the way I did it. I jumped off
Yeah.
that ladder. I jumped into the water, and I just flailed around and made movement until I started to float.
Yeah. It's very inspiring. And just from my own knowledge of working with others and research, there's very few people that can take that jump off the bridge into the ocean. Uh, I'm going to read a couple things out of the book again here. Uh, Page 43, and I wrote down unthinking treadmill on my own notes. I'm rethinking my career. I haven't been feeling fulfilled. Something is missing in my life. I need to find my purpose. I think I found it, giving a little girl pajamas. I'm thinking of throwing away everything I've achieved in my career to walk around giving kids pajamas and books. I have no idea how I'll make enough money to eat. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that I needed some support and encouragement from the people who'd known me the longest, who knew my best. Insecurity had me tied in knots. I was hiding my newfound hobby from my colleagues, thinking they'd surely laugh at me or worse, shun me. And and then it says, and just like that, the raindrop fell. I'll finish with this. The words pajama program were in a soft cloud-like lettering. similar to the bubble letters we used to write our names in grammar school. In my mind now, I was smiling, laughing, sitting with two or three children in my lap, and handing out pajamas with a line of children in front of me that stretched for miles and miles. And then I also highlighted a couple pages later, meditate, then look out for raindrops. I want to just make a couple comments and turn it back to you to talk about that. Uh, I try to make connections in my brain. It's three dimensional. I think on journeys, and I'm going back to your childhood and this at age 2, climbing out of the crib and looking to explore and be free, and then your mother's bedtime story. And you could have chosen a lot of different things, but you found your way to children. You said you didn't have children, but you found your way to children. And my brain all of a sudden drew this picture of that room, that empty room, that terrible circumstance with this child as being your crib, and you showing up to provide a book and pajamas and free them, free their hearts. I just had to make that connection. I'm sorry, it was just there. I could see you walking into my room when I was a kid and being that angel, bringing a book and the story to me and freeing me. Just tell me what you think about what I've just said.
Wow, that's fascinating. I never thought about it, never once. But yes, uh, I can't. I guess our minds and our hearts work in crazy ways, and that was bringing me back full circle. That was bringing me
Yeah,
back to the feelings of of how joyful freedom is, and not just
yeah,
freedom from a crib, but freedom in your heart and your mind, and not tied up in fear that these children were, that people were hurting them, and that they couldn't get away. They couldn't climb out of a crib. There was nowhere they could go, and they were just so anxiety ridden
yeah.
that I can't imagine how. I mean, I'm picturing this. I'm picturing being tied up. And you're right. I had the luxury of being able to run, and I couldn't stand the thought that these kids had that their heart was tied up with rope.
Wow. Everybody, this is a teaching moment on the show, so just come back and listen to this part again. I get all excited when I hear the guests tell the hero's journey narrative in their story. I mean, if you look for a way to live beyond yourself and create a legacy, give back beyond, and they say, Genevieve, and I'm sure you get this, that we have basic human needs, and leaving a legacy, contribution. When we do that, we feel no pain, and quite frankly, I believe, I'm a faith-based man too, that the institutions of marriage and business and the things like our cars and our homes, eventually those things all crumble. The people in our lives pass on. But when you leave a legacy beyond yourself, that's the pathway to being fulfilled. And I'm so proud of you and the things you're doing. Let's get into a couple strategies, or just give us some tips, or you talk about leadership lessons. Here you built this thing. And I just, one more thing I'll read, and this will be the last of the readings today, that I've learned how scary a career and life change can be, but I always remembered that fateful question: if this is my life for the next 30 years, is it enough? You don't need to see the whole path before you just need to take the first step and trust that the next ones will be revealed. So giving up your career, and then I think thinking about how you pay your bills. I read somewhere that your amazing husband, uh, the idea of meditation, and then a lot of entrepreneurs try to start businesses, they fail. So give us some lessons. How did you, I mean, 7 million, that's amazing to me. How did you create all this, and what would you tell everybody were the lessons learned, a couple of them?
Well, definitely the one that runs through my book, and I say it's the thread. It is. It's the human connection, the power. I didn't have social media 20 years ago. We didn't have what we have now. I had to tell my story. We had email, if that counts, but I had to tell my story to anybody who would listen face to face. I'd stand on a soapbox if I had one, because once I started to tell people, which took me a while, I was afraid to say I was thinking about making this major change, because I knew people were going to say you're crazy, or how can you ever think about doing this, and why. So when I started to tell people, they felt that little girl like I did. I started to timidly tell the story and try to gauge a response. But the response was just like me. I felt it was as if she was talking to them. So my connection with her and my connection with somebody was like their connection with her. It was just working that way mysteriously. And this human connection, when we are talking heart to heart about something so emotional, we're looking at people's eyes. We're wearing masks now. We have to look at each other's eyes. We're seeing the emotion. It's going from our heart, from our eyes into the heart. It just is.
Yeah.
And it's just strange that we're wearing masks and we have to look at each other in the eyes if we want to be with them, right?
Yes.
And looking in her eyes was was this thread. And it just, whether I told one person or I told a group, the majority of people felt the same as I felt. So I talk about the human connection, and so many things throughout the book happen because of the human connection, how powerful it is. And I think I try to remember that now. I learned that. And by telling just my story, I hope everybody has a story about how the human connection moved something. And I say we all have grown up hearing the power of one. Wow, the power of one. He did it, she did it, or we just had the idea. It's amazing. No, it's not the power of one. It's the power of one another.
Yes.
That's
That's
what
amazing.
moves mountains and it moves people.
Absolutely. There's so much in what you just said. My mind's going on another journey. I'm thinking now, visualizing the mask, and it is so true. And I wrote down on my paper as you were talking, just the word love equals time. And I remember reading somewhere that they asked children later in life, how do what's the meaning of love? And they said time with the people we love, time with our parents. And, uh, you know, I'm an author too, and I don't think I've told you, but I've been working on my children's book. That's why I was
Oh,
fascinated with your connection to them. And it's actually the story I made up when I was in that traumatic home that I used to tell myself. I wrote it out on an Olympia typewriter, gave it to my teacher. I got good grades on it. And she said, "You should write more." And I buried it and I lost it. Well, I put it out in a Word document a couple months ago, and it's called The Brave Dime. And I remember that thinking that if I could turn this into a book, I'll give it away for free, because all I want is to tell the adults out there who are working like mad men and women, who are traveling in business and not spending those times connecting to the children. I wanted that. Take a book and read to those children. So my heart goes out to what you're doing. The heart thing is such a big thing for me, and I just want to say this is another teaching moment, everybody. That uh, this is proven by science. And Genevieve, they say that the pathway to people is through the heart, and people remember how you made them feel, not on what you said. And I highly recommend everybody gets this book, reads it, passes it on, because when I read the book, and I tell it like it is, that in the first 20% of the book, my heart was aching. I mean, I was in that story. I could feel the emotion of that story. I didn't even have to read your words, just the vision of children and you and that moment in the pajamas. It's like, oh my God. So well done with that. Uh, let's move as we get to the end of the interview here. I could talk to you all day long about this. Uh, there was something about the COVID-19, and as you were creating the book, you talked a little bit in the introduction about that. Just because it's an interest story in the Times. Here you are in New York, and how has that affected your perspective on life? What's it like?
well, it's still a shock. It was and is very disturbing. The I asked if I could, the publisher, if I could please put in this author's note, because first it affected me personally. My mom was diagnosed with COVID the very beginning,
Well,
and we thought it was a death sentence, as it was so sadly for so many. She
yeah,
recovered, but at that point, it could have gone either way, and it was devastating. And that made all of us look inward, look to our hearts and our souls, and look to those we treasured, the precious people in our circle that we were now quarantined with.
yeah,
And I think for the first time in ages, most of us just it was a dead stop. It was like brakes on.
Yep.
And it wasn't like we were driving. Somebody else put the brakes on. And all of a sudden, your world became this big.
Yes.
And my world was this big. And I think about the kids that we serve not being able to, come to our reading centers. And I think about the families that are hurting so much because of what's happened in their worlds. I think about the people with jobs who didn't keep the jobs, who are looking for jobs. It's just a time when we're searching, and we blame things that are happening out of control,
Yeah.
and we're also at the same time, I think, thinking about our lives and wanting very much to make some changes and hoping that we'll have the opportunity and the control, because right now we don't have control and we don't have peace. We can't
Yes.
plan. So I talk in the book about taking the jump like I did, and many people have, and sliding something into your life. And during the COVID, and then during all the injustices we've seen, the racial injustices, all the things that we have to fix, we have to keep ourselves centered somehow. We have to use that human connection, I think, to rally for one another and keep the good flame burning. And when you
Yes.
feel good and you have hope for your future, I hope that it spreads, and that goodness and that joy you feel, even if you do what you love 1 hour a week. If you can't make a jump, make a slide what you love into your world. I think it fills us with hope and a possibility that we're not sacrificing everything we wanted. Now we don't have to put it way back, way back on the way back burner. That if we can share what we love in the worst times, it'll connect us. It'll bring us back to being human with each other first and foremost.
Yeah, it's a great teaching, and everybody, when you read the book, you'll go get really deep into that. I've been thinking about that too, just in the context of those children and all children. They don't understand COVID-19, what it is, that they can't see grandma or grandpa, and these children who don't even have families. They'll grow up in a world being confused, and the other thing I think about is parents are under stress, and the children who have parents, usually they're at work, but now they're sometimes isolated, and that family stress is in the home more. And so that connection and that joy and that love, I just so love what you said. In the world of mental health, as I was saying, that joy is actually one of the mental health hacks to improving, you know, your well-being, dealing with anxiety. And I've struggled with anxiety, depression through a part of my life. I talk about it openly, and the more we can have people like you doing work to create those positive thoughts and connections and emotions, it'll make the world a better place. So thank you for all you're doing. Tell me quickly about this organization, how you set it up. You have to give 7 million pajamas and then books. You talked about a reading center. Just quickly, what does that look like? I'm not familiar with everything you do.
Well, we started to open volunteer chapters, so people would start to call if they heard about what we're doing from other cities, first neighboring cities, and then word got out. So we have 63 local chapters run by volunteer chapter presidents, and in every covering either a city, a state, or a region. And through all of those chapter presidents and all the work we do to subsidize whatever they need, it's 7 million up till now, probably a little more now. And
Yeah.
it's it's an amazing, and I never expected to be here. If it was up to me, like I said, it's not the power of one. I'd still be walking around Manhattan with a bag like Santa Claus of pajamas. But I I learned all these life lessons late about what's important and about working together and the miracles that can happen. And 3 years ago, I decided I wanted to write and share and speak more. And I'm not a good business person. I mean, I'm okay, but I needed somebody to take this baby to college. And
Yeah.
so I discussed it with the board, and we hired a great woman who's now the executive director. So I let go of that, and I'm founder, so that I could do what I love, and it's sharing the story. So she's been amazing at, all the strategy with a college. I always tease her and I say, you've taken this long college, because it was 18 years, and next year it'll be 20. And so all of those things that she put in place during COVID, the virtual walk we did and the virtual storytelling now that we're doing is all her and all our staff. And our chapter presidents are amazing. Many of them have been here since I started, just me. They heard in local areas near New York, the other states near New York. So it's been an incredible series of lessons that's all I wanted to do, is share that in the hopes that I'd hear more stories from other people.
It's amazing. They say that selfless people, like you are one, start off doing random acts of kindness with no expectation of reciprocity. It's from their heart. And those people, things just grow into something massive. And even today, when I see you talking about this, I can see you, the listeners on the podcast won't, but there's this humility in you and this kindness, but you're not arrogant. It's not about how great you are. And I think that is a great teaching moment on the show, and an honor to what you're doing, that this truly is about the children and about something you do from your heart. A couple of things I want to throw out there, because you got me going on this journey again in my head, is I've spent a decade in mental health volunteering at a leadership level on a board. And we, a few years ago, merged our not-for-profit into one that provides shelters for homeless and marginalized people. And there's this whole world out there I discovered, and they're older, they're youth, and they're not the children, but they grow into youth who still are struggling. And we always look at ways to do things to give back to that community. And when I was younger, I was searching for the true meaning of my life, Genevieve, like you did, and it took me a long time. And I remember going to one of Tony Robbins' programs. I think you'll know obviously who he is. Most people do. And there was a thing called Basket Brigade, and I became a head of a basket brigade where we put baskets together and knocked on people's doors and dropped them off at Christmas. I used to put blankets in my trunk and drive around Vancouver, the streets of Vancouver when it was cold, and see homeless people. Young women got to me, and I would get out and I'd say, "What's your name?" And if they didn't speak, I'd smile and give them a blanket. And I always had this vision of doing something on a scale that could grow in, but I never really stop to focus on that one thing. So I think we met for a reason. If there's visions in your head of branching out internationally, you should talk to people like me first. I also want to correct something you said in my mind, that you are a tremendous business person. I learned that CEOs look up and out of the business. Managers look down and in. In other words, like on the Titanic, you're looking at the horizon, the dangers, and you're the visionary building the Eiffel Tower. The workers get it done. You had this vision to do this. That is something incredible to me. And it started with you do it, from I read the book, doing it off the side of your desk, walking through subways. So you are a tremendous business person, and I honor that. Let's get to the last part of the show here, where I want to honor you with some leadership words. I do this, and you probably see me looking down my paper here. I write as you talk. It's not scripted, Genevieve. And these are words that I want to honor you. So the first one is purposeful. You are purposeful. The second one is compassion. It comes out of you, and it just is infectious. Third is brave. I mean, coming to another country, jumping off into the ocean to start this. Action, another word that comes to mind. And the last two is trailblazer. And then, of course, I had to put down human connection. You're an example of that. And so because of the honor and the type of show I have, I want to induct you formally while we're live streaming into the Quiet Warrior Tribe. I don't know if anybody told you about that, but we shall do that. So you see the image behind me, screensaver, you can see that image.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Well, when I started the show 3 years ago, I wanted to find quiet warriors, people who would quietly go in life, taking a story of their own and turning it into a purpose, and committing lifelong to take action and serve with purpose. That's a challenge coin. That's what you're looking at. The origins are back to World War I, where soldiers would carry them in their pockets to commit to a community. If you didn't have it, you might have to buy drinks or buy dinner. And those coins grew around the world. Today, they're used by first responders. My dad was in AA for 23 years before he passed away a couple of years ago. All of the World Challenge coins are there. So this is hand painted and crafted and made in the United States. Sorry, Canada. And on the back of the image is the hero's journey narrative by Joseph Campbell, the actual crest of what that journey looks like. The front you can see is the show, and there's a guy there. You might recognize him. And so I'm inducting you into the Quiet Warriors. Welcome to the tribe. And less than 50 of these coins go out a year. And there are now over 150 of these being carried in 7 countries by Quiet Warriors. So welcome aboard.
Oh, thank you, Tom. That's just beautiful.
You're welcome. Now it comes in a cherry box, and when the mail system all sorts out, you'll eventually be receiving it. And I know you and I will be standing together somewhere talking. So I hope to take a picture with you. Last was giving you the last word here about where can people find the book. Tell us the title again and get a hold of you for your speaking and your other work.
Sure. The book is Purpose, Passion, and Pajamas, How to Transform Your Life, Embrace the Human Connection, and Lead with Meaning. It's on Amazon. And my website's GenevievePiturro.com. And Pajama Program is pajamaprogram.org. And I love to hear people's ideas. I love to be the sounding board if somebody wants to start something, either a jump or a slide, or just wants an ear. You know, I was fortunate enough once I started asking people for advice that I got people's ears and I got some mentors. And I firmly believe that people just need people and ears to listen.
I love that. I've just written that down. People just need people, ears to listen. It might actually form part of the title of the show. But Genevieve, it's been an honor having you here. And as I wrap up here, I want to say, everybody, find the show when it comes out. It's going to be on the Quiet Warrior Show International Podcast. Subscribe to it on your favorite channel. When it comes out, give it a download, listen, and rate it so we can honor Genevieve's story. And get the book. Genevieve, I'm almost finished reading it. I'll be posting a review for you online about that book. And everybody, live with true purpose. Find that passion like you hear from Genevieve, and live the life that you deserve and desire. Genevieve, thank you so much.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, anybody who's listening. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Stand by. Okay, we're just ending the broadcast.